In the silence where the world ends and the soul begins, at the edge of the unseen, where spirit whispers and truth burns quietly, there is a temple, not made of stone or time, but of forgotten light. You have entered Soul Sanctum. Here, every story is a mirror, every shadow a lesson, every whisper a calling. This is not just a channel, it is a return to who you've always been. Soul Sanctum, where the soul awakens.
In the deep silence between heartbeats and the weight of emptiness, there lies a place where the soul hides. It is there, within the shadows that do not scream, that the story of a forgotten consciousness begins. Not forgotten by others, but by itself. It was once light, before the fall. But time, relentless as desert winds, slowly erased the traces of what once was pure. There was no sound when the disconnection began, only a subtle disturbance in the spirit, like a thirst that could not be quenched, like an echo that never found its source. This soul, nameless and faceless, wandered through inner worlds. Its eyes did not see the outside, they were turned inward. A labyrinth of distorted memories created prisons of regret and doors locked by fear. It no longer knew where its pain ended and the forgetting began. Around it, shapeless forms, fragments of lives no longer lived, visions of what could have been, of loves unlived, of promises made on the edge of existence. All of it swirled like dust in a windless night, directionless, yet within the void, a seed, tiny, almost invisible, a spark of remembrance, a whisper not forgotten, only silenced. The soul felt something different, a slight warmth, as if a whisper touched its ear, saying, "You are still here, and that matters." That was the beginning of return. But return from where, and to where? The first step of the journey is not to seek the light. It is to embrace the shadow, to see beauty even in the ruin. The void. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg, demand, or force. It simply invites. A subtle invitation, like the echo of something once felt, but never understood. The soul senses this call like recognizing a forgotten scent from childhood. Something familiar, yet distant. And in this silent invitation, a question emerges, not in words, but in presence. Do you want to remember who you once were? The shadows around do not move. They are reflections of choices never made. Each step the soul takes sinks deeper, not into pain, but into truth. Because the void is not absence, it is a mirror. There, before a rusted door marked with forgotten symbols, she hesitates, not out of fear, but because she knows that once crossed, nothing will remain the same. And yet, she reaches out. At the touch of the handle, memories burst like stars in a dark sky. Past lives, broken promises, old laughter, none of it punished, only revealed. And then, she sees, at the center of the void, a mirror. But the reflection is not who she is. It is who she could have been, and still can be. The moment of crossing is not announced by trumpets or brilliant lights. It comes quietly, like the tide invading a sleeping shore, dissolving the old footprints in the sand. The forgotten soul, now awakened to its own existence, feels a tension in the air, as if the space around it were breathing, pulsing with a life previously invisible. Ahead, a veil, neither solid nor ethereal, a translucent curtain made of condensed memories, crystallized fears, malformed hopes. The veil does not block the path. It proposes a challenge. If you wish to move forward, you must cross not what is outside, but what you carry within. The soul hesitates, It feels the weight of old guilts, the chill of broken promises, the pain of unspoken regrets. Each negative feeling weaves invisible threads, pulling it back to the labyrinth of forgetting. But something has changed. The spark that was once only a whisper now burns like a flame. And this flame, though small, is unextinguishable. With a movement that is not physical, but pure will, the soul takes the first step. The veil ripples, trembles, whispers. Upon touching it, visions explode before the soul, not as punishments, but as necessary truths. It sees the moments when it betrayed itself, the times when it stopped loving, stopped believing, stopped resisting. It sees the faces of those it loved and lost, and it sees its own face, reflected in 1,000 broken fragments. Each vision is a sharp pain, but also a release. One cannot heal what one refuses to face. The soul breathes, not with lungs, but with its very essence. It accepts, and by accepting, it crosses. The veil, nourished by fears, dissipates like mist in the morning sun. On the other side, there are no promises of paradise, no guarantees of redemption. There is only a vast, empty field, ready to be recreated. And for the first time in countless ages, the soul understands. It is not merely a survivor of darkness. It is a sower of new worlds. And every world begins with a choice. In the heart of forgetting, where light seemed like a distant echo, something began to change. A dormant spark, ignored by the ages, pulsed silently at the core of the soul. It was not a scream. It was not a cry. It was merely a whisper of warmth, almost imperceptible, that drew the first crack in the walls of despair. The soul, still lost within its own ruins, felt this warmth touching its faded memories. It was like the rising sun behind a massive mountain. You do not see it, but you feel it. With each beat, with each whisper, the emptiness began to yield. The first spark did not illuminate the path. It only reminded the soul that there was something beyond forgetting. And even without direction, without strength, without clear hope, the soul took its first step, timid, trembling, but still a step. Each forgotten fragment that touched that spark transformed, not into pain, but into acceptance. The silent flame grew, not to consume, but to warm. It was a light that did not blind, a force that did not impose. It was a gentle reminder that darkness was not an end. It was an invitation to ignite something new, something pure, something eternal. As the soul walked through the rebuilt silence, it came upon a threshold, a point where the inner world seemed to hold its breath. It was a place without shape, without time, where everything was suspended, except the decision. There it realized that awakening was not a destination, but a choice that could not be made with eyes nor with words, but with the purest essence of being. There were two paths, not of stone nor of light, but paths made of intention. One led to accepting pain as part of healing, the other to rejecting its own story, returning to the cycle of forgetting. And before them, a voice, not external, but within, whispered, "There is no mistake in hesitation. There is only forgetting in refusing to try." The soul wavered. Its memories, now clearer, carried the weight of what had been lost. The forgotten childhood, the loved faces that dissolved in time, the decisions that hurt others and itself. Yet, among those memories, there was also a golden thread, small gestures of tenderness, moments of silence where love spoke louder than fear. The soul then understood that the past was not a prison, it was a mirror. Before it, The veil pulsed, not like a curtain, but like a living, breathing fabric. The touch was soft, almost maternal, and upon touching it, the soul was not taken forward nor backward. It was taken inward. Within itself, it found a garden. It wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense. There were twisted roots, withered flowers, and leaves veiled in shadow. But in the center, a single flower bloomed, not because it was surrounded by beauty, but because it had chosen to bloom anyway. It was there that the soul understood. The choice is daily, to awaken, to breathe, to continue, even when everything feels absent, empty, even when the light has not yet returned. The inner voice spoke again. You do not need to be ready. You only need to be willing. With that truth, the veil dissolved, and for the first time, the soul did not look up, seeking the sky, nor down, fearing the fall. It looked within, recognizing that the divine was not beyond. It was present. It always had been. The journey was not to find something. It was to remember what was never truly lost. The crossing continued, but something had changed. The void was no longer the same. Once oppressive, absolute. Now it pulsed with subtle vibrations, as if silence itself had come alive. Each step the soul took echoed not only through space, but through her very essence. It felt like walking across memories not yet lived. She felt layers, like veils dissolving. Each layer exposed not only what was lost, but also what she had never dared to face. Ancient wounds, yes, but also forgotten potential. Within the folds of the shadow, there was a staircase, not an ordinary one, not made of stone nor of light, a staircase of choices. Each step arose not from the ground, but from the courage to move forward. Touching a forgotten memory formed a step. Forgiving a buried pain revealed another. Accepting a weakness as part of herself uncovered yet another. She realized, you don't climb it with your feet, you climb it with your heart. And with every step inward, the landscape shifted. Darkness still existed, but it was no longer an enemy. It had become a silent witness to her rebuilding. Figures emerged in the distance. Shadows, yes, but familiar. Fragments of herself, of versions she had rejected or left behind. And one by one they approached, not to confront her, but to walk beside her. The staircase, once invisible, became more and more real. She understood. This ascent was not toward the heavens, but inward. A descent into the deepest layer of consciousness, where no lie could hide, where the soul stood raw and exposed. It was terrifying, but it was freeing. At the top of the staircase, something pulsed. It was not light or shadow, but both. A state of being beyond duality. She did not know its name, but for the first time, she didn't need to. She just needed to feel and keep moving.
The moment the soul crossed the final veil, there was no more darkness, no more light, not even silence. There was a full emptiness, not of absence, but of wholeness. A place where nothing needed to be spoken because everything was understood. Time stopped flowing and space dissolved. It was the point where all journeys meet, where all searching ends. There she saw what she had never dared to dream. Her true essence, stripped of fear, of form, of the past. A reflection that sought no approval, a presence that needed no meaning. She simply was, and in that being she found the crown. Not a crown of gold or jewels, but an invisible crown, forged from every step, every fall, every rebirth. It was the sum of all she had lived, all she had denied, and all she had finally accepted. The soul no longer needed to rise or fall. There was nowhere to go, because she was everywhere. She no longer needed to remember or forget, for everything was now integrated, dissolved in the great tapestry of the One. Then she heard the seventh whisper. It came from neither outside nor within. It was the very sound of being. You are the answer you have been seeking. In that moment, invisible tears fell from a face that was not physical. It was the cry of wholeness, of final liberation. All that had once been fragmented was now united. She looked back and saw no more shadows, not because they no longer existed, but because they now belonged to the light. And as she took the final step, not forward, but inward, the soul disappeared, or rather became everything. Nothing else needed to be said, because the seventh step is not an end. It is eternity saying, "Welcome back."
Thank you for walking with us on this journey beyond form and time. If this message touched your soul, leave your light on here. Like, comment, and share with those who also seek light as meaning. Subscribe to Soul Sanctum and continue with us in the silence that reveals, in the word that heals, in the presence that awakens. Your energy transforms this space into a sanctuary until the next whisper of the soul.